Most of us can look back on our childhoods and recall eating bowls full of the iconic blue box mac and cheese. Depending on who you ask, it's still the epitome of comfort food in adulthood. And the craving? It's real. There's just something about that bright yellow cheese sauce that soothes the soul. But did you know it's not the same as the stuff you used to love? Does that make a difference? Probably not, but it's still pretty fascinating to learn all sorts of trivia about this childhood favorite. It might even make you love it more, if that's even possible. Depression-era affordability. Kraft macaroni and cheese has been around since 1937, and that processed cheese was a game-changer during the Great Depression. The idea to box the pasta with the processed cheese as an easy dinner came about when a salesman started selling pasta with a packet of Kraft cheese attached with a rubber band. Inspired by that, Kraft began marketing the product as Kraft Dinner, with one box costing only pennies. Because of its affordability, long shelf life, and ability to feed a family of 4, the product flew off shelves and sold 8 million boxes in the first year. World War II kept the popularity of the product going. Due to food rationing during wartime, 2 boxes of Kraft Dinner could be purchased for 1 rationing coupon, and Kraft sold 80 million boxes in 1943.
This is incredible.
You like it?
Oh my God.
Oh, that is such a relief because I worked so hard on it.
No.
I call it Mac's Famous Mac and Cheese.
The biggest fans in the world. Think you love this stuff? You might not have anything on the average Canadian, because they're way more serious about their boxed cheesy pasta than Americans. They eat so much of it that they've made Kraft Dinner the top-selling grocery item in their country, with each person eating an average of 3.2 boxes per year. That's an astounding 55% more than Americans eat, and it's such a big deal it even got a trendy new name and makeover in 2015. Now, Kraft Dinner is just KD. Canadians are also responsible for a good chunk of the worldwide mac and cheese consumption, eating 1.7 million of the 7 million boxes sold each week. They do love their KD.
Ooh, cheese. Ooh, cheese.
Is that your hair? Yeah, it's gone a bit wrong.
Is it toxic? A 2017 study of boxed mac and cheese had people swearing off one of their favorite comfort foods due to the presence of phthalates. But should we really worry? Phthalates are a group of chemicals that get into foods during the manufacturing process, and a small study found that 29 of 30 cheese products tested contain phthalates. Powdered cheeses contain about 4 times more than natural cheese, but even though certain phthalates have been banned in children's products since 2008, it's probably not as bad as it initially seemed. In response to the study, Kraft said in part, the safety of phthalates has been assessed by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and other authorities, such as the Centers for Disease Control. The trace levels found in the one limited test of mac and cheese are well below any level of concern. Hundreds of servings of mac and cheese would need to be consumed daily over an entire lifetime in order to exceed levels determined as safe. Enjoy away. Just maybe not 100 boxes a day. What's the white stuff? If you've ever made Kraft's microwavable Easy Mac, you might have noticed a white powder inside. It's not the cheese powder, so what is it? The package reads, "Note, you will see loose white powder in pasta. This is necessary for proper cooking." That just sort of makes it more mysterious. But Kraft says it's nothing more than modified food starch included to prevent the Easy Mac from boiling over in the microwave. It also acts as a thickening agent, but since it's commonly made from corn, wheat, potato, and tapioca, that's something to keep in mind if you have allergies. If you do, just stick with the stovetop stuff. Secret switcheroo. So, did you notice when they changed the recipe without telling anyone? In what Kraft called the world's largest blind taste test, it was revealed in March 2016 that the company had overhauled their original mac and cheese recipe to remove artificial flavors, preservatives, and dyes. But the change actually took place in December 2015. And by the time they let us all in on the secret, they'd sold more than 50 million boxes without anyone noticing. The recipe reformulation came in response to consumers' desire for simpler ingredients. That classic yellow color is no longer achieved with yellow 5 and yellow 6, but paprika, annatto, and turmeric. Well played, Kraft.
Word to your mother.
Mac and cheese is a comfort food if there ever was one, but if you don't make it right, you'll end up with a gritty, mealy mess. To make the creamiest mac and cheese ever, though, you'll just have to do a couple of things differently. Armed with these ideas and a little know-how, you'll be well on your way to the creamiest mac and cheese ever. Choose your cheeses. You might think you can just throw whatever cheeses you happen to have in the fridge into your mac and cheese, but if you're looking to make the creamiest mac and cheese you possibly can, you'll want to be a little more discerning. A cheese like Parmesan, for instance, isn't going to melt super well, meaning it's better for a topper than for your creamy cheese sauce. Cheddar and similar cheeses that melt well, like Monterey Jack, will make your sauce the creamiest it can be. Martha Stewart magazine recommends sharp white cheddar for a luxurious sauce with a sharpness that will perfectly complement the richness of the dish. Give cottage cheese a try. When you're considering which cheeses to use for your mac and cheese, you might want to consider adding in some cottage cheese. It'll make the sauce extra creamy and extra cheesy without complicating the overall flavor profile too much. Choose your noodles. When making mac and cheese, you need to consider your desired outcome when choosing a noodle. You don't have to stick with macaroni every time just because that's the technical name of the dish. If you're going for the utmost creaminess, opt for a noodle that will hold a lot of sauce. Noodles with ridges are always a good choice. Cavatappi, cavatelli, rotini, even penne are all good mac and cheese noodles. Add cream. This one seems pretty obvious, but to get creamy mac and cheese, you have to get a creamy sauce.
Duh.
Rather than making a more traditional bechamel with whole milk, up the ante with a partly or mostly cream base. According to Epicurious, using a combination of milk and cream instead of just milk, plus whisking your cheese into the base in 3 stages will make your sauce the creamiest it can be. Add yogurt.
Who hasn't heard of yogurt?
Please, don't make a fuss. I'm just plain yogurt.
No, not that yogurt, the other kind. Like cream, yogurt can give your sauce a little bit of oomph. Swirl some in for added depth of flavor and creaminess. Make sure you choose a yogurt with some fat content to it, rather than the fat-free kind. Also, make sure you're using one that's not flavored and one without any added sugar. You don't want your cheese sauce to be too sweet. Add mascarpone. The perfect secret ingredient if you're looking for an extra creamy mac and cheese. Even just a dollop of mascarpone will elevate the creaminess quotient of your favorite dish. Just remember, the more you add, the creamier it will get, so be careful. Be careful with the roux. Though a roux is important for thickening up your cheese sauce, you want to make sure that you don't add too much of your flour and butter mixture because otherwise the sauce can get too thick, which negatively impacts the creaminess. Too much butter and flour will make your sauce more like glue than a creamy, rich sauce. Cook in milk. Cooking your noodles in milk instead of water makes your resulting mac and cheese creamier. According to The Kitchen, cooking your noodles in milk makes the sauce creamy before you even add the cheese sauce. The starches in the noodles get released as you cook them, helping to thicken the mixture from the start. That will ultimately help the resulting creaminess. Stick with the stovetop. All too often, baked macaroni and cheese takes on more of a casserole feel than the creaminess you're looking for. To prevent that, cook it entirely on your stovetop rather than finishing it in the oven. The sauce won't get overly thick and clumpy on the stovetop, meaning the end result will be creamy and silky smooth. Just what you're after.
Ooh, perfect!
Almost ready-to-eat mac and cheese isn't just an inexpensive food, it's also a convenient and surprisingly tasty one, no matter how old you are. If you're trying to find out which kind you should get, we did the legwork. Here are the most popular brands, ranked from the worst to the best. We love a boxed mac and cheese. Who doesn't? Part of the appeal is that there's some assembly required. You have to boil the water and cook the pasta, you have to rip open that powdery cheese packet and pour it in, and you may even add some butter if you're really feeling like flexing your chef muscles. But Lean Cuisine favorites macaroni and cheese takes that sense of accomplishment away from us, leaving us with nothing to do but stare at the slowly rotating frozen brick in the microwave, wondering how all of our life's patterns became so cyclical. Not everyone is a fan of frozen prepared meals, and it's not just because of their reputation as lazy foods. Frozen meals often just don't taste as good as fresh, especially when it comes to pasta, and that's definitely the case here. The cheese in this Lean Cuisine meal is almost like plastic, and the macaroni is limp, sad, lifeless, a far cry from the al dente delight you can get when you make your own pasta. You can definitely do better. Stouffer's macaroni and cheese doesn't cut it for us either. Is it a bit tastier than Lean Cuisine? Yes, but it still has that floppy, weak-looking macaroni that looks less than inviting. The cheese sauce can be watery and flavorless, and to top it all off, you don't even get much in a single package unless you buy a family size. Mac and cheese is about indulging, but you're not going to be able to fill a big bowl with a normal portion of this stuff. If you're left with no other options and have to pick up some Stouffer's to cure your mac and cheese craving, the least you can do is upgrade it. By adding protein, spices, and even some breadcrumbs, you may be able to save this less than appealing freezer meal. But by then, you might as well just make it yourself.
Well, yeah, I noticed. You put meat hunks in it. Wow, hunks of meat.
Trying to make mac and cheese healthy might just be the 8th deadly sin, so it's not a surprise that Banza elbows and classic cheddar is next on the chopping block. It's made with chickpea pasta, and the cheese is a classic cheddar, which is likely an attempt to equate it with more classic mac and cheese options like Kraft. Now, chickpea pasta can be delicious, but is it really the best type of pasta for mac and cheese? Judging by Banza's recipe, no. But while the flavor of the pasta is lacking, the texture of it isn't bad. However, there is one caveat. This chickpea pasta is gluten-free, so it is a good option if you're missing the mac and cheese of your childhood. And to be fair, we'd rather have this chickpea pasta than whole wheat pasta any day. Calling all Whole Foods lovers, if you're a regular shopper at Whole Foods, then you know the 365 Everyday Value brand carries just about any essential item you can think of, including mac and cheese. But you won't find the quality you've likely come to expect from the brand when you opt for this boxed product. Yes, it is edible, but still the sauce can turn out kind of dry, which lends itself to a clumpy texture that isn't exactly what most people are looking for in their mac and cheese. This product might not deserve too much hate on the basis of quality, apart from the fact that Whole Foods prides itself on its high quality. But why would you pay more for a store brand if you can get a better and cheaper name brand product somewhere else? You may want to skip this mac and cheese on your next Whole Foods run. We all have a soft spot in our hearts for Kraft Original Mac and Cheese. For many of us, it was our first ever mac and cheese experience, and we'll never forget biting into the tiny tubular noodles smothered in that bright orange cheese sauce and discovering there was, in fact, beauty in the world. And this culinary mainstay has been around for a while. Kraft launched its boxed mac and cheese product in 1937. Consumers could purchase the product for just 19 cents, and it would serve 4 people. Since the country was in the midst of the Great Depression at the time, this food was bound to be a success. Despite a myriad of changes to the economy since that time, Kraft is still one of the most popular boxed mac and cheese products out there. But do we love it because it's actually the best option, or because we've had it all our lives? We'd argue that it's the latter. Sure, Aldi is great for a lot of things, but perhaps the best word to describe Simply Nature organic macaroni and cheese from Aldi is neutral. It's definitely not bad, but it's not exactly packed with flavor either. Like many of Aldi's products, it's a relatively obvious ripoff of the standard Kraft Original, but the cheese might be slightly sharper in this iteration of the boxed classic. We won't judge if you eat it straight from the pot after a long day of work when you just can't be bothered to make a real meal. But you're not going to convince anyone it didn't come out of a box from a budget store, even with the most elaborate upgrades and enhancements. Marie Callender's Vermont White Cheddar Mac and Cheese is one frozen mac and cheese option we actually don't hate. There's actually a lot to love about this product. The sauce is super creamy, and the cheese has a sharper flavor than you may be used to in a store-bought mac and cheese. It may not remind you of traditional mac and cheese, but it does taste good. Add in the breadcrumbs, and this definitely isn't your basic powdered cheese packet mix. But alas, Marie Callender's couldn't manage to rank any higher than this because of the same soggy pasta issue. In other words, it's a texture thing. As a mac and cheese staple, you had to expect to see a Kraft product again, but we're more excited about this one. The Kraft Deluxe White Cheddar and Garlic Herbs is putting an elevated twist on the classic box meal. The white cheddar has a sharper taste than the original, which will likely appeal to everyone who grew up on Kraft but has since managed to refine their taste. The herb flavoring, while not very strong, lends a different, unexpected flavor to the dish that's overall pretty good. It's still your classic Kraft recipe though. The cheap noodles, the power, the suspiciously long list of ingredients. If you are willing to let your standards slip though, this mac and cheese may just be your perfect excuse.
You want a snack?
No, I'm not talking to you. Fine. Mac and cheese.
If you're looking for your ultimate cheap go-to meal, it has to be the Kroger brand Original Mac and Cheese. It comes in at under $1, and at 3 servings per container, this is definitely a solid meal option when your rent is due and you don't get paid for a week. Apart from the amazing price point, the quality of the product is pretty good, especially considering the price. Overall, it reminds us of the Kraft brand, but somehow it just tastes better. Does your local grocery store have a specially designated health food section? If so, there's a good chance you'll see Annie's shells and real aged cheddar there. You can get this stuff in a box, but it's also offered in single-serving microwavable cups if you want to take your mac on the go. We have to admit, there's something about shell pasta that might be even better than macaroni, and the aged cheddar flavoring in this product is slightly more refined than Kraft. But while Annie's purports to be healthier than other brands out there, it turns out that that isn't the full story. While the company's products may be labeled natural or organic, Annie's mac and cheese is just as unhealthy as Kraft mac and cheese in many ways. That doesn't mean you shouldn't eat it, of course. It does taste good. Just make sure you don't fool yourself into thinking you're actually eating healthy when you pop open a box of this stuff. Pretty much anything Trader Joe's has a chance of winning a spot at the table considering what a huge fan following many of its products have. The Trader Joe's organic shells and white cheddar macaroni and cheese is no exception. For a so-called healthier mac and cheese option, this boxed product may be one of the cheapest on the market, which you've probably already come to expect from Trader Joe's. Even though it may come in a box, you shouldn't be expecting the orange cheese sauce you've been used to for all these years, since the cheese in this product is a creamy white color. While this mac and cheese is flavorful, it's also possible to use it as a base for a more interesting pasta dish. But even on nights when you can't convince yourself to do anything more complicated than boil some pasta, you're not going to be disappointed with this choice. We know what we said about frozen mac and cheese, but when it comes to the Evol truffle parmesan mac and cheese, you can ignore those criticisms completely. This stuff is downright delicious. Parmesan isn't the typical cheese you'd use in a mac and cheese dish, but we can't get enough of this unexpected flavor. And it may seem like everyone is obsessed with truffles these days, but they do provide a rich, earthy tone that's melt in your mouth amazing, especially when combined with cheese. The dish is also topped with panko breadcrumbs. We weren't expecting them to be particularly crunchy considering it's microwaved, but we were wrong, and the crunch is real. Evol might not be the cheapest brand out there, but there's a reason for that. The company offers higher quality frozen meals than you might not be used to if you grew up in the era of kid cuisine, and this is mac and cheese that you can actually look forward to. The blue Kraft box may be the most well-known boxed mac and cheese product, but if you ate a lot of mac and cheese growing up, you probably had some Velveeta shells and cheese in your pantry from time to time as well. The original flavor is the most well-known, but the company has now expanded to include all kinds of flavors, like bacon and even broccoli. But none of those add-ins can overpower the flavor and texture of the bright yellow Velveeta. It may come as a surprise, but Velveeta was once seen as a healthy product to feed your family. These days, we know better than to think these shells and slathered with Velveeta cheese are healthy, but we've never quite gotten over that silky smooth texture that makes every bite feel like a warm hug. When you think of mac and cheese, you probably don't equate it with veganism, and that makes sense. How could anything smothered in an animal product ever be considered vegan? However, as veganism has gained in popularity, there are more and more companies popping up to create vegan versions of all your favorite non-vegan items. Mac and cheese is high on the list, since vegan cheese is something that can be difficult to make at home. That's where modern table mac and cheese comes in. This stuff is taking vegan mac and cheese to a whole new level. The lentil pasta is surprisingly unlentil-like, which means you don't have to trick yourself into pretending it's normal pasta. There are 3 different flavors, but we're most in love with the 3 cheese option. Even if you're not vegan, this stuff is definitely worth a try. One of the parts we like best about mac and cheese is the fact that it takes you back to your childhood when things were a bit simpler and a lot more fun. That's what the Back to Nature Crazy Bugs macaroni and cheese dinner is all about. The recipe is pretty simple, but there's so much about this box meal that earns it a spot at the top of the list. Most notable is the shape of the pasta. Not only is it fun and guaranteed to make adults smile just as much as kids, but it's also perfect for holding onto all that delicious sauce. The cheese makes its way into all the little crevices and makes every bite creamier. For some reason, the pasta takes a little bit longer to cook than other mac and cheese brands out there, but if you're committed to having the best, it's worth the extra time.
We're having macaroni tonight! That means garlic bread, yes!
Boxed macaroni and cheese is a tried and true childhood favorite, and many of us enjoy this classic side dish well into adulthood. It's really the perfect taste treat when you're craving comfort food but just don't feel like cooking. But now that your taste buds have matured, you might realize that boxed mac and cheese doesn't quite pack the same punch. Fortunately, there's a secret ingredient that can liven things up in a jiffy. Not to worry, this miraculous mac and cheese hack doesn't require any complicated techniques or additional cooking time. You'll be able to improve the flavor of your macaroni and cheese in the same amount of time it usually takes to make the dish. And when all is said and done, you might fall in love with this scrumptious snack all over again. This is buttermilk. Thick, rich, and tangy. That tang will vastly improve the taste of your boxed mac and cheese. Simply swap out the suggested amount of milk for buttermilk and you're good to go. Buttermilk will add considerable kick to your mac and cheese, and it makes the sauce more creamy and delicious. If you don't have buttermilk on hand, you can try using a buttermilk substitute like kefir. But for this recipe, don't try that old trick of adding vinegar to milk. That just makes the buttermilk thinner and gives it a little too much bite. The next time you pick up a few boxes of mac and cheese at the grocery store, grab a carton of buttermilk too. Best of all, after you've eaten your noodle delight, you'll have plenty of leftover buttermilk to whip up fluffy pancakes, biscuits, and more. It's enough to make you want to dance through steamy pools of cheese sauce.
There's Kraft macaroni and cheese. Kraft has more cheese than those other guys.
If you don't use buttermilk on the regular, you're probably wondering what this stuff is. Despite what the name implies, buttermilk isn't milk with butter mixed into it. In fact, it's sort of the opposite. Buttermilk is actually what's left over from the process of making butter. Whole milk straight from the cow is churned, causing the milk fat to solidify and turn into butter. The leftover liquid is buttermilk, which becomes tangy thanks to naturally occurring cultures. Buttermilk lasts a whole lot longer than fresh milk too, so before the use of refrigerators, it was a popular cooking staple. These days, the buttermilk you buy at grocery stores is more often fresh milk that's been treated with lactic acid bacteria until it becomes tangy and thick. Buttermilk is high in protein and low in fat, though you can get full-fat varieties if you'd prefer an altogether richer product. If you're worried about not being able to finish a carton of buttermilk before it goes bad, you can sleep easy tonight. Not only does it last longer than most dairy products, but it also freezes well too. If you want to make your boxed mac and cheese taste a bit more refined but don't have buttermilk on hand, there are plenty of other ways to get that rich, tangy taste you so desperately crave. As we mentioned before, adding vinegar or lemon juice to your milk just won't work for this recipe, since it makes the mixture too thin. Your mac could turn out watery as a result, and frankly, who has time for that? Beyond kefir, you might want to add in some Greek yogurt or sour cream for maximum deliciousness. Plain Greek yogurt adds creaminess and tang to your mac and cheese, but we recommend thinning it with a little bit of milk before mixing it in. If you're trying to cut calories, you can choose Greek yogurt with 0% fat. But personally, we prefer Greek yogurt that's at least 2% fat. This gives your mac and cheese terrific texture and flavor. Oh, and helpful hint, using Greek yogurt with 5% fat is particularly decadent. As we said, sour cream is another terrific option. It's thick, creamy, and has a tangy flavor that will instantly offset the richness of the cheese in your macaroni. For a milder taste that still provides plenty of rich creaminess, try stirring in some softened cream cheese. If you're craving even more tang, squeezing a bit of lemon juice into your macaroni and cheese will do just the trick. Bon appetit!
Few things are as comforting as warm, creamy macaroni and cheese. A bowl of the stuff can be an instant mood elevator after a long day, and while there are plenty of frozen options on the market, not all are equal. Here's how they stack up from worst to best. As soon as the Lean Cuisine macaroni and cheese comes out of the microwave, it smells like the classic box of stovetop Velveeta mac and cheese, which was a nostalgic plus. But unfortunately, all of that anticipation will be wiped out after the first bite. The texture is thick and creamy, but the flavor tastes a little bit like the plastic it was cooked in, or, for some reason, canned asparagus. It's just weird and gross and pretty off-putting. Cheddar cheese is listed in the ingredients, while asparagus is not, so it's unclear just what the source of that unappealing flavor is, but it's completely weird. It's understandable that you might be looking for a mac and cheese that doesn't completely break your calorie budget for the day. With the Lean Cuisine, it's convenient that the 1 10-ounce package is considered a full serving and only sets you back 300 calories. It's also got 14 grams of protein, which is a plus. But ultimately, other brands can provide you with similar dietary numbers without that weird taste.
My macaroni and cheese!
It was gonna be disgusting. I did you a favor.
While microwaving the Banquet mac and cheese, it'll quickly become clear that the cheese sauce is incredibly watery. After a quick stir, well, in the olden days, it used to taste like a still thin, still watery version of boxed stovetop Kraft mac and cheese. Bad news, it hasn't improved. After looking at the ingredients list, it's no surprise water is the first ingredient listed for the cheese sauce. The ingredient list also includes a handful of other heavily processed ingredients that other brands don't rely on, which, in the end, doesn't really seem to help the cause much. What makes it to the table is edible, but there's a chance it might remind you of airline food. It's also worth considering the fact that it has a whopping 1,160 milligrams of sodium, which is considered about 50% of your daily value of salt. While mac and cheese isn't inherently the healthiest option, that's still a pretty large dose of salt to swallow.
Someone's got the cheese fix again.
Smart Ones, previously associated with Weight Watchers, is another option for those looking for a lighter comfort food option. This mac and cheese claims to have a blend of 3 cheeses that they seem to think would add a little bit of variety to the dish. While the cheese flavor is nice, the sauce can be a little too watery and the noodles a little too thick and chewy. With a few little tweaks, this could be a really incredible mac and cheese, especially if you add something to it, but for now, it's really just the best of the diet options. It wasn't that long ago that organic, gluten-free frozen food was hard to come by. Those days are long gone, as Amy's can be found in almost every grocery store and many convenience stores. The selection of Amy's frozen mac and cheeses is large, but let's talk about the classic macaroni and cheese made with organic pasta. At first bite, it's clear that the sauce is thick and creamy and the pasta has a nice texture to it. It's cheesy, but not overly cheesy, which might be due to the use of white cheddar in the sauce. But there was something slightly off about the flavor of the mac, and it's noticeably different from traditional mac and cheese sauce recipes. It's not better or worse, it's just different. So it really boils down to a matter of taste with this one. As far as the ingredient list goes, it's about as clean as it gets, with most of the same ingredients you'd use at home to make a pot of mac and cheese. The 9-ounce package has 450 calories, 18 grams of protein, and is a perfectly filling entree for one. No, American cheese is not considered gourmet cheese, but the thing is, it's a delicious addition to macaroni and cheese, providing that same gooey and creamy texture that you love when using it in a grilled cheese sandwich. You don't need the majority of your cheese sauce to be made with American cheese, but you might be surprised how much it can contribute to a batch of homemade cheddar mac. Hormel Macaroni and Cheese is one of the few brands that advertise their use of American cheese in the mix, and it totally works. The mac and cheese is creamy and cheesy with a bolder flavor than some other varieties. That may be partially due to the higher sodium content in this pasta, but it works on the taste buds and hits all the flavor, texture, and tender pasta notes you're looking for without breaking the mold. It's perfectly comforting and comes in a package large enough to serve 3 people as a side dish comfortably, and comfort is what it's about.
Macaroni and cheese? Hey, you know what I like. I grew up on macaroni and cheese.
Marie Callender's has been around since 1948, founded as a bakery specializing in pies. In the 70-plus years since then, the brand has been a staple in the frozen dinners market. Famous for the large selection of frozen pot pies they produce, comfort food is clearly the name of the game here. The creamy Vermont white cheddar mac and cheese is one of the most popular mac and cheese products they offer, and for good reason. The sharpness of the aged white cheddar is made into a perfectly luscious sauce that thickly coats the long shell-style pasta. It's not orange like other macs, but you won't miss the food coloring in this dish. Marie Callender's macaroni and cheese comes in a 13-ounce package, which is large enough for 2 or 3 people to share as sides, or one larger-sized entree for one. The calorie count is higher than some of the previous dishes, and it's also worth noting that this also comes with an almost outrageous 1,650 milligrams of sodium. If you're watching your sodium, this might not be for you. Stouffer's Macaroni and Cheese is one of the most recognizable frozen mac and cheese brands. It's easy to find in nearly every grocery and convenience store and comes in sizes fit for one, a small family, or for a family reunion. So what makes it so popular? It may be the bold orangey coloring, but the cheese sauce itself tastes like it's been packed with cheddar. The sauce is thick enough to coat the pasta with every spoonful, but not so thick that it glues the noodles together. And every Stouffer's Mac and Cheese Pro knows that if you leave it in the microwave for another 30 seconds, you might just achieve the coveted grilled cheese-like crust around the sides of the container. Unfortunately, the noodles can be a little soft. It's less of an issue if you're baking the mac and cheese, but honestly, very few people are going to spend 45 minutes or so waiting on the oven. The 12-ounce package suited for one serving runs you 500 calories and 1,200 milligrams of sodium, but that won't deter some die-hard fans. Ultimately, you can rest assured that you're going to get the same reliable cheesy flavor with every box of Stouffer's macaroni and cheese that you buy, which is probably one of the most comforting things about it. It was bold of Blake's to try to make a microwavable mac and cheese finished with a breadcrumb topping to resemble a baked macaroni and cheese. Sometimes taking a risk pays off. It wasn't too dry or thick like breadcrumb toppings can sometimes be straight out of the oven, and it had a perfectly creamy white cheddar cheese sauce. Additionally, there are no strange ingredients in this dish, made almost entirely with organic ingredients. The 8-ounce package of Blake's Farmhouse mac and cheese will only cost you 300 calories. which means you might not want to bother with one of the less than great so-called diet-friendly choices when you can have something so fulfilling for almost the same nutritional value and all of the comfort that comes with it. While not as well known as some of the other brands, Devour is a newcomer that's making a splash when it comes to mac and cheese. You're not going to find your mum's macaroni and cheese in their lineup, and instead, Devour offers a handful of mac and cheese options for those looking for something a little different. Buffalo chicken mac and cheese is studded with blue cheese and buffalo chicken pieces, and their chicken cordon bleu mac and cheese is made with a Swiss and provolone cheese sauce that's got both ham and grilled chicken pieces folded into the mix. So much more than a simple mac, Devour aims to present you with an entire meal in one package. For the time being, there are no vegetarian or gluten-free options, as even the sharp cheddar mac and cheese comes with bacon bits sprinkled into it. Nutritionally speaking, most of these meals come with a higher calorie count than other options, but should be seen as a complete meal, not just a side dish. And that's a good thing. You're going to want that next bite. Going into the microwave, the mix might look a little dry, and there aren't any special descriptions on the packaging other than a nice picture and a casual mention of 3 cheeses sauce in small print that set it apart from the competition. But this mac and cheese from Whole Foods is pleasantly surprising. Not only is it a real cheese sauce, but the seasonings are unlike anything the other brands are doing. It's the sort of thing that you'd be perfectly happy to buy and serve friends, old and new, as a side. While the package states that the 3 kinds of cheese used are organic cheddar cheese, organic mozzarella, and organic aged hard cheese, it's unclear what kind of aged hard cheese is used exactly. But that's okay. Overall, one 9-ounce package of the 365 brand organic macaroni and cheese packs a comforting gourmet punch that is completely enjoyable, because cheese, after all, just goes perfectly with some things.
But no matter what you think of Newberg's blue cheese cooler, there is one thing everyone can agree on. Newberg's uses only the finest ingredients.
Bob Evans macaroni and cheese is technically a refrigerated dish, not a frozen one, but it's prepared exactly the same way that all of the others are in the microwave, so it counts. Especially considering that it comes out exceptionally thick and creamy, with perfectly cooked noodles that make sharing difficult. The classic cheddar macaroni and cheese is jam-packed with flavor, and while it might not taste like 100% real cheese, it's got the ultimate cheddar sauce mac and cheese taste that's next to impossible to duplicate at home. Even the most staunch Stouffer's lover may be converted with a taste of Bob Evans. As far as calories go, a single-serving container of this mac and cheese clocks in at 220 calories. And while the serving size is also a bit smaller than most of the other packages at 6 ounces, you're getting a better-tasting mac than most of the other options. Bonus, you're not obligated to share with anyone else unless you really want to. It's no secret that Trader Joe's has developed a devoted cult-like following for their private label frozen and prepared foods, and judging only by their mac and cheese, there's a good reason for that. Stacked in the freezer case, you might find at least 3 different types of macaroni and cheese, but let's talk about the Joe's Diner mac and cheese, since it presented itself as the most comforting classic option. Made with 4 kinds of cheese, this dish is positively overflowing with cheese. Granted, it looks a little odd straight out of the microwave with the cheeses all melted and clumped in the middle of the cooked pasta, but a minute or 2 of stirring brings it all together into an authentically cheesy dish that true cheese lovers won't be able to resist. The genuinely authentic cheesy nature of this dish also lends itself to any additions you'd like to make to it. It would be perfect for folding in some broccoli, scallions, bacon pieces, grilled chicken, or how about turning plain old mac and cheese into lobster mac and cheese? This mac tastes so homemade that you might never make it from scratch again. Believe the hype.
Whether you love it or hate it, you know that iconic blue box when you see it on the store shelf. Chances are you've eaten it more times than you can count. What's not to love? That leaves us with one question. How is this magical macaroni and cheese made? When Kraft mac and cheese made its debut around World War II, it was an instant hit. But before this revolutionary boxed meal came an even bigger innovation from J.L. Kraft, the man behind the Kraft Foods empire. In 1916, Kraft was awarded the first patent ever for creating processed cheese, which is basically a method for making a cheese product that is shelf-stable and won't spoil quickly. We won't get into the chemistry of it all, but it is safe to say that the processed cheese fundamentally changed the ways we eat. After Kraft's processed processed cheese became a hit, the company wanted to expand to feed the masses. Processed cheese led to the invention of powdered cheese, and eventually the boxed mac and cheese dinner was born. This was right around the Great Depression and World War II, so the cheap, easy, and yet elevated meal became a staple in many American households.
How's book club? It must be hard to discuss literature with your mouth full of my Kraft mac and cheese.
As counterintuitive as it may seem, the bright orange processed cheese powder that brings Kraft macaroni and cheese to life actually begins more like the cheese sauce it will become. And it all starts with real cheese. This cheese sauce gets a small amount of sodium phosphate added to it, which is the magic ingredient that helps bind the oil and water in cheese so that it stays smooth and creamy when it melts. At this point, the cheese is resembling something more like the Velveeta shells and cheese sauce we know and love. So how does it go from this to powder? The final step in going from cheese to cheese powder involves a process far older than Kraft macaroni and cheese itself: food dehydration. The natural version of the process has been used by indigenous Americans and some Eastern cultures for generations. Food dehydration dates back to the late 18th century. The main function of dehydrating food, either naturally using heat or more modern chemical processes, is to make it essentially non-perishable. Today, it's so common that you can buy food dehydrators on Amazon for less than $45, and that's basically what Kraft uses, only smaller. Kraft macaroni and cheese can be identified in part by the distinct yellowish-orange color of its processed product. For a long time, that signature color came from the addition of synthetic food dyes, but that is not the case anymore. In 2015, thanks to growing consumer demand for more natural foods, Kraft announced that it was changing up the way it makes its famous macaroni and cheese. Going forward, the company eliminated the use of all artificial colors, flavors, and preservatives in its whole line of products, including the boxed mac and cheese. When Kraft removed these synthetic dyes from its boxed mac and cheese, it had to add something in its place to make sure the product still looked and tasted the same for consumers. Today, Kraft macaroni and cheese is made with a blend of spices that help achieve that goal. They include bright red paprika, which is infused into the noodles as well as used in the cheese sauce, rich yellow turmeric, which contains a host of health benefits in addition to the perfect mac and cheese hue, is also included. According to Eater, Kraft massaged their new mac and cheese formula for over 3 years before they got it just right. And while there were a small number of mac and cheese lovers who petitioned Kraft to go back to their original recipe, most people embraced the changes. While no one is trying to claim that Kraft macaroni and cheese is a good substitute for a salad, the blue box is actually full of more nutrients than you might think. One box of Kraft mac and cheese contains about 3 servings, and each serving contains a whopping 9 grams of protein. On top of that, Kraft mac and cheese is a great source of calcium and iron, with 10% of your recommended daily value of each in a serving. And having a little mac and cheese with kids won't be a diet breaker either. There are just 3 grams of fat per serving and no trans fats. Heck, have the whole box without feeling guilty. The only kicker is the sodium. With 570 milligrams in each serving, you're looking at almost a quarter of your daily recommended intake right there.
Tell me about Mac's famous mac and cheese.
We know that Kraft macaroni and cheese does in fact contain real cheese, but it's a processed powdered cheese, so it's worth clarifying what that means for allergies and dietary restrictions. First of all, this may be surprising, but Kraft mac and cheese is not technically considered vegetarian. That's because, per a FAQ on Kraft's corporate website, during the process of converting milk into cheese, enzymes from animal sources are used. So, those who choose not to consume animal products should be aware of this when deciding whether they want to eat this mac and cheese. Additionally, anyone with intolerance to gluten may need to evaluate if they can eat Kraft mac and cheese. On the box's ingredients list, it clearly states that the product contains wheat and milk. There is some good news for some. Kraft does offer a gluten-free version of its boxed mac and cheese. What started out as a single box of macaroni and cheese has grown into an empire. Kraft has expanded way beyond its original recipe and now offers dozens of Kraft mac and cheese products in a variety of flavors from 3 cheese to white cheddar. Kraft relies on a variety of its patented cheese powders to create these flavors, and Kraft keeps coming up with more. The company is always trying out new limited edition flavors. One of their most recent concoctions is Candy Kraft mac and cheese. If you're not sure how you feel about it, you're not alone. Let's just say some work out better than others.
It's stunning how easily you can produce flabby, mushy, bland, and grainy mac and cheese simply by failing to use the right ingredients, ignoring techniques, and overlooking essential details. To save you from such humiliation, we've compiled the list of fatal mistakes to avoid. First and foremost, let's address the macaroni elephant in the room. The most egregious mistake you can make is to rely on prepackaged mac and cheese.
Cheddar goblin by Devane. It's gobbling good.
Cheddar goblin.
Yes, it's a convenient shortcut that avoids the complications of making a roux and cuts down on dishwashing. Yes, it's cheaper than investing in quality pasta and fine cheeses, the kinds that don't come in powder form or some glorious, otherworldly radioactive shade of orange. And yes, you may argue that there are more artisanal, environmentally friendly, and supposedly gourmet versions out there than the classic Kraft version. And you wouldn't be alone. Social and digital media arbiters are only too eager to sing the praises of the best prepackaged brands on the market, suggesting ingenious ways to upgrade boxed mac and cheese. But don't fall for these tactics. If you do, you'll be committing the original mac and cheese sin. Instead, stay on the true path by investing in honest ingredients and cooking from scratch. It's the only way you'll ever get to mac and cheese heaven. Mac and cheese is a marriage between two much-loved ingredients, pasta and cheese. For the union to succeed, both partners have to complement each other. This can only happen if you choose the right cheese. Immediately you can eliminate Velveeta, although a fervent minority is partial to its undeniable creaminess. In the words of the FDA, it isn't cheese, but a quote, cheese product. That said, you don't have to run out and invest in an exorbitantly priced White Farms cheddar. In a HuffPost article, cheese guru Janet Fletcher warned against using insanely expensive, refined, or unusual cheeses, the qualities of which will be lost when you melt them. Instead of limiting yourself to a single cheese, opt for a carefully selected blend of cheeses you can layer. Chef Danielle Hudgens points out about successful mac and cheese, it needs loads of flavor and depth. Using different cheeses allows you to taste layers of flavor combos. Some cheeses melt more easily and have a creamier texture and milder flavor. Popular choices in this camp include Fontina, Gouda, Gruyere, and Monterey Jack. Others are sharper and more pungent, such as cheddar, Parmesan, and even Roquefort. The trick is to find a balanced mix of simple, quality cheeses. Assembling a stellar team of cheeses is key to earning accolades for your mac and cheese. But quantity is just as important as quality. By its very nature, mac and cheese is a cheese-heavy dish. If you want your mac to be lavishly coated in a thick, creamy blanket of cheese, you have to go heavy on the grater. Always grate more cheese than you think you're going to need. Decadent? Yes. Then again, you're not going to be eating this every day. Moreover, make sure you actually do grate your own cheese. Sure, buying pre-shredded cheese is more convenient than doing it yourself. However, any gains in efficiency will be offset by a loss in taste, texture, and quality. The truth is that pre-shredded cheese is frequently spiked with stabilizers and preservatives. While these ensure a longer shelf life, the downsides include artificial flavors, waxy textures, and less meltability. Some believe that mac and cheese arrived in America courtesy of Thomas Jefferson, who returned from Europe with pasta recipes and a pasta-making machine. In 1802, he famously served mac and cheese at a state dinner. However, it was Kraft that truly popularized the dish with elbow macaroni when it launched its box version in 1937. Since then, elbow macaroni has remained the standard. More than a matter of tradition or aesthetics, it's a question of engineering. Cheese sauce is too heavy for many pastas, causing them to clump. Elbow macaroni is designed to hold thick, creamy sauces. Its curves and holes catch and hold on to sauce, maximizing cheesiness with every bite. For similarly strategic reasons, alternatives include other small and groovy pasta shapes, such as shells and campanelle. Choosing the right mac is essential, but it's all for nothing if you don't cook it properly.
I don't know how to make mac and cheese, and I don't want to be the one to mess it up. I like living here.
First things first, make sure you only use quality dry pasta as opposed to fresh pasta, which will turn into a sticky clump as it cooks. Bring your water to a rolling boil and then toss in at least 1 heaping tablespoon of kosher salt. Do not add oil to the water, as this may prevent the cheese sauce from sticking to the pasta. Because many recipes for macaroni are double cooked, boiled and then baked, you want to drain your pasta when it's just a minute or two shy of reaching a firm, chewy, al dente state. Anything more will result in flabby noodles lacking in chewiness that are unable to absorb the sauce. Finally, when you drain your cooked pasta, don't rinse it. This will wash away all of the noodle's coveted starch, which helps bind the cheese sauce to the macaroni. One of the trickiest parts of the mac and cheese process is making the bechamel sauce. Considered one of the 5 classic mother sauces of French cooking, this thick white sauce was named after Louis de Bechamel, a steward of French King Louis XIV. The sauce's true origins, however, can be traced to Tuscany, where it was evocatively known as salsa cola, or glue sauce. Bechamel sauce relies on a simple trio of ingredients: milk, butter, and flour. The combination of butter and flour cooked slowly over low heat is known as a roux. Despite the simplicity of the ingredients involved, bechamels are disaster-prone. For instance, the roux has a nasty habit of sticking to the bottom of the pan and burning while the bechamel is simmering. To avoid these pitfalls, use a pot with a heavy bottom and stir as if your life depended on it. Warming the milk before adding it to the roux not only thickens the sauce in half the time, but also reduces the splatter that inevitably occurs when cold milk meets hot butter. Make sure you add the milk slowly, little by little, and cook for at least 10 minutes. If you undercook your bechamel, you risk giving it a gritty texture and raw flour taste. When it comes to milk, percentage is everything. Many of us idealistically and wrongly assume that for mac and cheese, all milk is created equal. However, using anything less than whole milk is courting catastrophe. The higher a milk's fat content, the more stable it will be while cooking. If you opt for reduced fat, low fat, or skim milk, you risk giving your mac and cheese an unpleasant greasy texture and look. In place of whole milk, you can add 1 part cream to 3 parts 2% milk. If you're investing in cream though, you might as well go all out and use either light cream, whipping cream, or heavy cream to make what Epicurious describes as the quote creamiest, dreamiest mac and cheese sauce you can imagine. Soupy sauce is almost as bad as mushy mac. This major mishap can occur if you add too much liquid to what should be a rich, thick, creamy cheese sauce. Steer clear of disaster by adding small amounts of liquid at a time. Stir until well blended, then take stock of your sauce. If you find it to be a little sludgy, you can always add liquid, but subtracting is more difficult. Similarly, never add grated cheese to your bechamel sauce all at once. Whisk in each variety of cheese little by little, stirring until the sauce is perfectly blended. If you add too much too quickly, your sauce can split or become unstable as it cooks. A slow, steady method of blending also prevents cheese's natural oils from separating from the sauce during cooking, which would create unappetizing pools of grease. You might think that a brilliant selection of zesty cheeses mixed into a bechamel sauce is all it takes to create a flavorful mac and cheese. While butter, flour, and milk make a great base for a sauce, the resulting taste isn't going to tempt you to lick the spoon. Adding a judicious sprinkling of spices will enhance the sauce, resulting in a finished product bursting with flavor. Aside from salt and ground black pepper, favorite options include dashes of nutmeg and cayenne pepper for warmth and spark. A sprinkling of mustard powder and/or a blob of Dijon mustard are also zingy antidotes to blandness, as are garlic powder and onion powder. A dusting of paprika or turmeric adds a tinge of pungency as well as a healthy golden tint to the final cheesy color scheme. Mac and cheese is more than just a marriage between pasta and cheese. It's also about the happy union of creaminess and crunchiness. Smooth macaroni and luscious cheese sauce truly comes into its own when paired with its culinary soulmate, a crackling brown topping. On their own, hard, dry cheeses add sharp flavors, but they burn easily. Meanwhile, if left unaccompanied, soft, creamy cheeses will make a gooey mess without developing that desirable golden gratinade look. One solution is to use a strategic mix of both types. Although creating a top crust of gratinade cheese is one way of achieving such crunch, the consensus among mac and cheese experts is that you can't have maximum crunch without also using breadcrumbs. Even though you're using cheese, make sure to season your breadcrumbs before tossing them into the mix. Melted butter, fresh parsley, crushed garlic, and onion powder are worthy additions that add a welcome spice. It takes a very strong-willed individual to remove a fragrant, crackling, bubbling pan of mac and cheese from the oven and not succumb to its lure by immediately helping yourself to a big heaping bowl of cheesy deliciousness. However, despite appearances to the contrary, mac and cheese is not unlike a slab of beautifully grilled or roasted meat. The flavors and textures of both meat and mac hit their peak if they're allowed to rest for 10 to 15 minutes after leaving the oven. Taking a short siesta allows the cheese sauce to calmly settle around the macaroni, burrowing into its nooks and crannies. If you don't let your mac enjoy this rest, the sauce will literally be a hot and runny mess. It may be hard, but try to stop yourself from digging into that dish as soon as it comes out from the oven. At its core, mac and cheese is simple, gooey, delicious fun. To be true to the spirit of this classic comfort food, it's essential to keep preparation as uncomplicated as possible. Aside from seeking out obscure and expensive cheeses, such as the outrageously priced White Farms cheddar, this means stomping on any urge to fuss things up with foodie-friendly suggestions, such as truffle oil and the ubiquitous lobster. As part of our endless search for variety, the online universe is full of advice on how to jazz up, dress up, spice up, kick up, and amp up mac and cheese. This includes adding everything from chorizo and figs to leftover chili. Some have even gone so far as to suggest ingredients like guacamole and tortilla chips. Such hacks are not only misguided, but completely unnecessary. It is considered culinary heresy to pollute a classic recipe with unnecessary bells and whistles. Regardless, once you've steered clear of all mistakes and followed the steps required to make a perfect pan of mac and cheese, there is no rule saying you can only serve and consume it in a bowl. Since mac and cheese and grilled cheese sandwiches both rely on 2 basic ingredients, it seems only natural to combine these cheesy and chewy classics into a grilled mac and cheese sandwich. Perhaps less natural, but equally inspired, is the addition of mac and cheese to other iconic comfort foods.
Mac and cheese pizza?
Yeah.
You're making that?
Yeah.
Layer a generous helping of mac and cheese onto a pizza crust, add some extra cheese, and blast it in the oven to enjoy a mac and cheese pizza. Press mac and cheese into a bun alongside a freshly grilled hot dog for a mac and cheese dog. Make a chewier variation of a cheeseburger by topping or even filling a juicy burger with mac and cheese. And if you're a real starch fiend, use mac and cheese to stuff baked potatoes. Ultimately, mac and cheese is endlessly adaptable. The only limit is your imagination.
It's hard not to love boxed mac and cheese, and making the most out of the creamy pasta isn't hard. Whether it's meat, spices, or extra cheese, here are a few easy hacks to amp up the flavor and get the most out of every bite. So just think about it. Mac and cheese by itself is creamy and cheesy. So by using basic logic, adding more creamy cheese to the mix would only serve to amplify the comforting effect. And actual cream cheese has the added benefit of providing a slightly tangy taste. According to one Redditor, you don't even need much cream cheese to make a significant improvement to the taste and flavor of standard boxed mac and cheese. Simply add a few ounces of an inexpensive cream cheese to your pot of mac, stir it in, and allow it to melt over low heat as the flavors meld. Of course, you'll get the best flavor if you purchase full-fat cream cheese rather than reduced fat or fat-free, although the added ingredient won't exactly make your pot of mac and cheese any healthier. But then again, mac and cheese isn't supposed to be a health food, so if you plan to indulge, might as well go all in, right? It makes sense that the first mac and cheese hack you consider wouldn't involve adding spices to the mix. But the reality is, even a little bit of pepper can go a long way in amping up the taste of boxed mac and cheese. One Redditor responded to a question about making mac and cheese better by simply stating, "A dash of black pepper. Thank me later." Other proponents of the hack suggested throwing in a lot more than a dash, and one Redditor gave the hack high praise by saying, "Black pepper is some gourmet work lunchroom sh." That highlights an important point. Adding black pepper couldn't be cheaper or easier, since you likely already have the spice on hand. Even if you are in the work lunchroom, you could probably dig up some single-use pepper packets left over from someone's fast food lunch. Sure, standard boxed mac and cheese has some protein in it already. Cheese contains protein, milk has protein, and even pasta has a little bit. But if you're trying to increase protein intake, mac and cheese is an easy base for adding any number of different protein options. In one Reddit thread on improving boxed mac and cheese, different users suggested lots of easy options. Ground beef, slices of sausage or hot dogs, a can of tuna, bacon, or even Spam. In fact, one Redditor suggested Spam and got pretty specific with the tip, stating, "Dice it and get the pieces super crispy. It stretches it and makes it so smoky and luxurious." Imitation lobster, crab, clams, and even chorizo also made the list. Obviously, none of these suggestions are high-end meats, so choose the one that fits with your palate and personal budget. Or you could always try other options, like shredded chicken or beef. You could even throw in an egg or two and let it cook while you mix in the cheese. Kraft even offers up more complex, protein-rich recipes like taco bakes and lasagna. You don't even have to like Cheez-It crackers all that much to appreciate the next-level genius of adding them to your mac and cheese. In another Reddit thread, Reddit user Let It Dough suggested crushing up the crackers and sprinkling them on top of your prepared mac and cheese. But Let It Dough wasn't the only Cheez-It genius to offer up tips. Capped Obvious 789 suggested stirring the Cheez-Its into the cheese sauce. And yet another Redditor went next level by saying you should crush the Cheez-Its, mix them with butter, then toast them to make them extra crispy before sprinkling them on top of your pasta. No matter how you do it, the gist is the same. Take something cheesy, crunchy, and salty, and add it as a topping or a mix-in to your cheesy, gooey pasta. Basically, you end up with a comfort food flavor explosion. And if you really don't like Cheez-It, experiment with other crunchy snack foods, like goldfish crackers or pretzels.
Flavor, flavor, flavor! Crunch!
Okay, for the most part, boxed mac and cheese hacks are low-key recipes that are easy to add to your cooking routine. But there are a few gourmet hacks that are worth test driving at least a time or two. That's why you should add deep-fried mac and cheese balls to your repertoire. Really, the concept couldn't be easier. Reddit suggests simply making the boxed mix according to the recipe and mixing in jalapenos, bacon bits, or other add-ins for extra flavor. Then you form the mac and cheese into balls and refrigerate to get the shape in place before coating them in egg and breadcrumbs. The last step is to simply fry the coated balls and serve, turning your basic boxed mix into a somewhat fancier affair. Another Redditor offered the suggestion of spreading the mac and cheese in a pan and cutting it into bars before refrigerating, breading, and frying. Bonus points if you mix some veggies into the mac and cheese before frying to at least serve up a few extra nutrients. In what can only be referred to as a poor student's mac and cheese hack, Redditor Continuous Baba suggests taking 2 college noodle favorites, packages of ramen and boxed mac and cheese, and pulling a switcheroo on the sauces. You simply make the cheese sauce, according to the mac and cheese directions, but mix the sauce with ramen noodles. Whether you opt to use the ramen noodle flavoring is really up to you. Continuous Baba suggests against it, but some of the other Redditors responding to this hack said that using both types of sauce with both types of noodles is the best hack around. All you have to do is just throw everything in the pot together. Granted, you'll probably end up eating enough sodium in one sitting for 2 or 3 lifetimes, but if it's an occasional treat, you'll probably survive. When it comes to boxed mac and cheese hacks, the general goal is to make standard mac and cheese even cheesier, creamier, and more packed with fat and sodium than the original. Which honestly makes sense. If you're going to eat comfort food, why not make it as indulgent as possible? One way to maximize the creaminess of your mac and cheese is to switch out regular milk for something even creamier, like heavy cream. The result is a thicker, more decadent mac and cheese, according to Redditor Haley J1609, who made the hack by mistake after she started pasta, then realized she had no milk on hand. She wrote about the experience saying, "Holy cow, it was the most intense mac and cheese ever." She's not alone. In the same Reddit thread, another Redditor suggested using heavy cream and additional grated cheese. In other words, take the creaminess and the cheesiness up a notch. As for what type of cheese to add to the mix, well, that's up to you. The good news is lots of Redditors have suggestions when it comes to adding additional cheese to boxed mac and cheese to level up the taste experience. You can always steal packets of cheese mix from other boxes of mac and cheese to enjoy twice the cheese, but ultimately, that just messes up your future mac and cheese making experience. It's better to add small amounts of fresh cheese to the mix. Popular suggestions include cheddar, Gouda, and Parmesan cheeses. Although some suggestions offer the simple shredded cheese option, you could also work in nacho-style cheese dips to make your pasta extra cheesy. Granted, no one seems to suggest fancy cheeses like gorgonzola, feta, or goat cheese. Maybe because it doesn't make sense to spend more money on adding extra cheese than you do on the entire box of mac. But if you happen to have an extra slab of brie sitting around and want to test it out, go ahead and give it a try. Maybe add some prosciutto and scallions while you're at it. Who says mac and cheese can't go gourmet?
I would have to say that it is one of the great comforting foods of all time.
Alright, so adding cream of chicken soup to boxed mac and cheese might seem weird, but cream-based soups are an excellent base for casseroles. And really, boxed mac and cheese is just a few ingredients away from being a casserole. Take Reddit's advice and consider ditching the milk in the standard directions. Instead, add peas and a can of cream of chicken soup instead. One Redditor said it changed their life. That's high praise for a hack that's so simple, but it makes sense. Peas and cream of chicken soup basically turn the standard mac and cheese into a simple casserole. Throw in some diced pieces of chicken, extra veggies, and a layer of breadcrumbs on top if you really want to transform the basic pasta into a full-on meal. And for the full casserole effect, throw the whole thing in an oven-safe dish and cook for about 30 minutes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. It'll make those breadcrumbs and the top layer of cheese and pasta nice and crispy. If mac and cheese is good, and if grilled cheese sandwiches are good, then what could be better than combining the two into the ultimate starchy, cheesy handheld meal? While the Redditor who made this suggestion said to simply put mac and cheese between 2 pieces of grilled bread, it's not hard to think of ways to make the experience even better. For instance, make sure you're not just using toasted bread. Load those slices up with butter before you grill them to amp up the flavor. Of course, don't stop at piling in the mac and cheese. Throw some extra sliced cheese in there. Sharp cheddar or pepper jack might give the sandwich an extra bite. And if you feel you need a little more protein, grill up some bacon or grab a few slices of roast beef you can add to your sandwich. Basically, if the add-in tastes good in a sandwich or with mac and cheese, it'll probably taste delicious in your mac and cheese sandwich too. It's not just Redditors who know a thing or two about mac and cheese hacks. The social media giant TikTok is filled with video tips to make mac and cheese better. For instance, TikTok user Sauced Up Foods says that you shouldn't follow the cooking directions as listed on the box. With this hack, you add the powdered cheese directly to the boiling pasta water. This way, the cheese melts and cooks into the pasta as the pasta is cooking, rather than being added to the pasta after it's done. Of course, this TikTok user also added extra shredded cheese to the recipe, so you have to assume that at least some of the boxed version improvement comes from the added cheese. But a writer who test drove the hack for the kitchen admitted that the hacked mac and cheese preparation did offer a slight improvement to the overall texture and flavor of the meal. A different TikToker also offered a hack that helps you squeeze the last bit of liquid cheese from the packet while making mac and cheese. In a video shared by Brooke Lowe, someone uses a lid to squeeze out the gooey cheese, pressing the packet in between the lip of the pot and the lid and pulling. Easy, right?
It's way past my bedtime, but it's hard to sleep when I know the babysitter's treating herself to a late night helping of my Kraft mac and cheese.
While most boxed mac and cheese modifications don't do anything to improve the nutrient content of the dish, that doesn't mean you can't opt for a somewhat healthier mac and cheese dish. Just as you can add almost any protein to boxed mac and cheese, you can also add practically any cooked veggie. Canned peas are one option that has already gotten a mention, but don't confine yourself to the little round veggies. Try throwing in sautéed onions or cooked broccoli or zucchini. And of course, Redditors aren't short on other possible suggestions. For instance, roasted cauliflower, fried okra, diced bell peppers, chopped tomato, and sun-dried tomatoes all made this list. So if you start to think of your boxed mac and cheese as a simple base for a full-fledged meal, all you have to do is identify the proteins and veggies you like most with your pasta and mix them right in. You don't have to mess with the original, but if you're looking for ways to improve the experience all while on a budget, it's not a bad way to start.
Cracker Barrel is the perfect place to go if you're looking for a bit of Southern-style comfort food with a huge serving of nostalgia. Cracker Barrel is known for its uniqueness to this day, offering customers an old-school dining experience replete with antique decor, home-style cooking, and a porch full of rocking chairs. There seems to be a general consensus on what one of the best dishes from the restaurant is: their home-style mac and cheese. Whether you're recovering from a long week or want to reward yourself at the end of a tiring workday, the chain's version of the classic dish never disappoints. Seriously, you don't need to modify the dish at all with fancy additions like pulled pork or blue cheese. Let's be honest here, it's mac and cheese, one of the most comforting meals ever created. What we're saying is, if you're looking for something that will make you feel all warm and fuzzy, you should definitely consider this Cracker Barrel menu staple. So what sets Cracker Barrel's mac and cheese apart from its fast food peers? For one, it is made with a perfectly balanced cheese and noodle blend to take you straight to taste bud heaven. Secondly, the side is baked perfectly, producing a dish that is super creamy with patches of crispy cheese for that special something that keeps you coming back for more. This dish is so simple, but it doesn't require anything complicated to make you fall in love.
Macaroni and cheese? Hey, you know what I like. I grew up on macaroni and cheese. Hey, listen, I never say no when it comes to macaroni and cheese.
The scrumptious dish works well as a side, but can also make a filling main for those days where you really just need to help raise your spirits. There's a reason it's called comfort food after all. The Cracker Barrel website even lists larger size options as part of their catering menu if you know your whole family will want to dig in at home. With Cracker Barrel's vast menu, it makes sense that newbies can get a bit overwhelmed. In one such instance, someone reached out on Reddit to ask Cracker Barrel fans for food recommendations. They said, "I have a gift card to Cracker Barrel and I've never been there before. What's the best thing they offer? Going for dinner?" Cracker Barrel fans responded with their faves, including several former servers. Frequently recommended items included the fried chicken, pancakes, and of course the mac and cheese. Pro tip, an employee recommendation is always worth checking out. After all, they know every single one of their employer's dirty secrets. In a different thread, an AMA from a Cracker Barrel dishwasher, the mac and cheese was named again as an employee fave. The worker was kind enough to answer basically the same question twice, telling legions of posters that the mac and cheese was one of the restaurant's best dishes. Look for reviews on food websites and you'll find tons of praise for Cracker Barrel's savory bowl of cheesy goodness. Unsurprisingly, the dish has a cult-like following online, with loads of copycat recipes for those willing to put in the work and prepare the meal at home. Another great thing about this Cracker Barrel menu item, if you're really craving mac and cheese but not totally sure it's all you want for your meal, you'll still have plenty of room left to try other dishes at the restaurant. A side serving of their mac and cheese doesn't pack in a ton of calories of fat. It's really a perfect side dish to help complement the rest of the meal. Like many restaurant dishes, you may want to be mindful if you're watching your salt intake, however. A side serving of this comforting dish contains 700 milligrams of sodium, about a third of your daily recommended intake. Perhaps what's the most appealing about Cracker Barrel's mac and cheese, however, is that it retains its classic flavors by keeping things relatively simple. The dish features a recognizable combo of elbow macaroni noodles and gooey cheese, really offering up a nostalgic trip down memory lane. After all, is there anything more comforting than feeling like a child again, digging into a warm bowl full of macaroni and cheese?
plain mac and cheese is so last year. Bored with the boxed stuff? Over the TikTok recipe fails? From funky fungi and hellfire to 1950s diet food, here's everything you need to power up your pasta. Cauliflower has been having a serious moment.
Did you just say cauliflower to me?
It's appeared in everything from low-carb pizza crust to paleo rice, so it's no wonder it's a frequent guest in mac and cheese. Rich in vitamins, cauliflower also boasts loads of fiber, which makes you feel fuller longer. Antioxidants found in cruciferous vegetables may also reduce the risk of cancer and diabetes. Plus, with its mild flavor, cauliflower is easy to add for body and creaminess with much less fat. Thanks to its mild nuttiness and texture, cauliflower florets are particularly delicious when paired with cheese sauce. In mac and cheese, cauliflower adds contrast, flavor, and nutrients to the dish for a triple play winner. Avocado is yet another superfood that seems to be everywhere, from toast to smoothies. But have you ever considered it as the perfect way to add a luscious helping of healthy fats to your mac and cheese? While some consider the idea ludicrous, hear us out on this one.
Wait! Please, avocados taste great on lots of things!
Avocado boasts a natural creaminess with a mild, slightly sweet flavor that doesn't detract from a classic mac. While it isn't likely to change the flavor much on its own, when it's combined with other ingredients like lime juice and cilantro, it lends a decidedly southwestern flair to the typically southern staple. Bonus points if you opt for pepper jack cheese in the base. Avocado can even be used to jazz up boxed mac and cheese, turning the pantry staple into something slightly more elevated and delicious. Protein-rich cottage cheese became the ubiquitous diet food of the 1950s and 60s, and while it fell from grace for a while, it recently has come back into the limelight thanks to its pleasantly sour flavor and nutrient-dense appeal. Not only is it good for you, lower in calories and higher in protein than many other cheeses, it also makes cheese sauce extra creamy without loads of extra fat.
Dennis, what is this enticing bowl of white?
This? Charlie, that's cottage cheese.
Cottage cheese also doesn't take the spotlight away from the other flavors in your mac and cheese. It merely boosts the creaminess factor so that perhaps the Parmesan can shine. If you want the other cheeses in your dish to do the heavy lifting in terms of flavor, cottage cheese is the perfect secret ingredient to improve texture without adding loads of extra calories. If you're from the South, you probably already know that eggs are a common ingredient in baked mac and cheese to make it easier to slice. Whole eggs thicken baked mac and cheese enough to allow it to hold its shape, making it perfect for potlucks. But while whole eggs are a no-brainer, there's an argument in favor of adding just the yolk to mac and cheese, particularly in the stovetop version. Without the proteins that give egg whites their binding power, egg yolks lend a rich creaminess to the mix, emulsifying all of that fat into a creamy bowl of cheesy heaven. Mustard powder is a fairly common ingredient in mac and cheese sauce, but Dijon mustard does double duty in both the flavor and texture departments. Not only does adding a touch of Dijon provide a subtle balance of acidity and heat to counteract all that richness, but it also does much of the same work as the egg yolk.
Pardon me, would you have any Grey Poupon?
But of course.
Mustard is a natural emulsifier, one of the main reasons it's such a welcome ingredient to vinaigrettes. It lends the same emulsifying power to mac and cheese, ensuring that your cheese sauce doesn't split. The resulting sauce will never be oily or stringy, but always and forever creamy, not to mention delicious. If you're looking for a mac and cheese that's packed with flavor, look no further than Boursin. The spreadable French cheese begins with a relatively mild cow's milk base. The fact that it has little flavor on its own means that it's more about it being a creamy vehicle for a heavy hand of garlic and herbs. Boursin is the secret ingredient that Walt Disney Parks and Resorts uses to add flavor and creamy texture to its own mac and cheese. If you want something less garlicky than the classic, Boursin also makes the cheese in versions seasoned with shallot and chive, black pepper, basil and chive, cranberry and spice, and red chili pepper. There are more than enough versions to try until you stumble upon your favorite. A blend of basil, pine nuts, olive oil, and Parmesan cheese, pesto is the perfect way to add loads of extra flavor and a pop of color to mac and cheese. Of course, you could make your pesto from scratch if you want to, but we're totally cool with store-bought. Try the sun-dried tomato-based pesto for a totally different flavor for your cheese sauce base. As for how to include your pesto, you can either stir it into the sauce so that it's fully integrated in the dish, or you can marble it into the casserole just before baking so that you end up with pesto-rich pockets throughout the bake. In keeping with the Italian theme, consider adding chunks of mozzarella too, so that you have surprising bites of cheese throughout. Calabrian Induja is a spreadable, spicy salami hailing from the south of Italy. It's cooked atop pizza, mixed in pasta, and added just about everywhere else. Oily and fatty, it boasts a hefty kick from Calabrian chilies and a lightly funky flavor thanks to its fermentation. It's already heavily seasoned, so it does a whole lot of work in the flavor department with very little effort.
That's how it's done, son. That's how it's done, son.
Stir Induja into hot mac and cheese, either on the stovetop or before baking, or fold in small chunks cold from the fridge for pops of flavor within the creamy base. It's best paired with cheeses that aren't too bold. A classic cheddar base is perfect to let the Induja do the talking. Pumpkin and winter squash is a natural pairing with mac and cheese. Not only does the orange hue lend a vibrant appeal to the cheese sauce, but the slightly sweet flavor of pumpkin also helps to offset some of the richness. Use pumpkin puree, which will lend color to the dish, but offers slightly less flavor. Or roast cubes of pumpkin and fold them into the mac for more contrast in flavor and texture. Consider toasting some breadcrumbs with sage and thyme to sprinkle over the top for a true, unbeatable classic. Lobster is the perfect luxury addition to this comfort food classic. The sweetness of lobster pairs nicely with the creamy cheese sauce, and it definitely brings special occasion flair to the dish. Most recipes call for folding just cooked chunks of lobster into your pasta before baking it as a casserole, though you'll want to be careful not to overcook the lobster. To reduce this risk, consider a stovetop version.
Oh, you guys, there's a jet. Oh, I needed this.
Sauté some breadcrumbs in butter and Old Bay seasoning, sprinkle them on top of your finished dish, and dig into a restaurant-quality mac and cheese. Tomato soup is a welcome addition to your mac and cheese. Umami-rich tomato highlights the savoriness of cheese, bringing a touch of sweetness and welcome acidity, plus even more creaminess. If you want to include even more nostalgic flair, top it with crushed Cheez-Its before baking. Roasted tomatoes also give mac and cheese a delicious glow-up with pockets of sweet, caramelized flavor hidden among the pasta. Simply roast, then fold the cooked tomatoes into your mac and cheese. You could also opt for sun-dried tomatoes in a pinch. Just be sure to chop them into smaller pieces first, as these tomatoes pack a ton of flavor and could overpower the dish if left whole. Adding vegetables to your mac and cheese is a great way to bulk it up and gain a helping of nutrients. And while many different vegetables could go nicely with the flavors of mac and cheese, spinach is a no-brainer. Rich in vitamins and minerals, its earthy flavor goes wonderfully with acidic cheeses like feta or goat cheese. Jazz up a classic mac and cheese by folding in wilted spinach and hunks of creamy chèvre. The resulting dish will be beautiful with its bright green color, a casserole that Popeye would totally love.
Oh, Popeye, you're the real Mr. Muscle Beach.
Broccoli and cheese sauce are a match made in heaven. Of course, there's nothing worse than overcooked broccoli. The secret is to add the broccoli florets to the pasta mixture while they're raw, so that they don't overcook while the casserole bakes. If you're making a stovetop version, roast or sauté your broccoli separately, then fold it into the mac and cheese just before serving.
Hold it. Broccoli?
Broccoli isn't just a delicious flavor boost to mac and cheese, it's also packed with vitamins, minerals, and fiber, not to mention antioxidants and cancer-fighting nutrients. Consider including broccoli, cauliflower, and Romanesco florets to your mac and cheese for complementary flavors and nutrients, not to mention a beautiful color contrast in the finished bake. Kale is yet another superfood that makes a surprisingly delicious mac and cheese. It's tender enough to wilt down quickly in the cheese sauce, but robust enough to remain present in the final dish. And of course, kale has loads of benefits thanks to its off-the-charts richness in vitamins and minerals. While curly green kale has become a bit of a standard, purple kale is a touch less bitter, plus it brings an even more vibrant color to the plate. Lacinato kale, also known as dinosaur kale for its unique texture, has an even sweeter flavor that might be best suited for kids or anyone who's trying to sneak some veggies into their meal. Many cheeses already have a slight mushroomy funk, especially those like brie and camembert. These white-rinded cheeses are inoculated with a specific sort of fungus, and their flavor is only highlighted and magnified when paired with mushrooms. Since mushrooms are full of water, it's important to sauté them before adding them to your mac and cheese. You could also use rehydrated dried mushrooms like porcinis or morels.
What does that mean? What does fold in the cheese mean? He folds it in.
A basic cheddar sauce totally works, but a Gruyere base punches things up to 11. Whichever base cheese you choose, consider folding in a few large crumbles of brie or camembert for cheesy pockets that will mirror those earthy mushroom flavors. One delicious way to cut through the richness of mac and cheese is with a bit of heat. And if you want to make your dish extra delicious, consider serving your mac and cheese with a side of chili crisp.
That's hot.
Lao Ganma is one of the most popular Chinese hot sauces, known for its crispy texture and rich flavor. If it's so beloved, it's probably because it isn't just hot for the sake of being hot. Featuring garlic, onions, sesame, and shallot, it packs sweet, savory, and umami flavors for a total whammy of a sauce. You can find chili crisp in stores these days, but you can also make it yourself. Rather than stir the sauce into your mac and cheese, serve it on the side so that everyone can dress up their plate as hot or not as they like. Yet another way of bringing a bit of heat to your mac and cheese is by inviting chilies to the party. A can of diced green chilies is an easy add-in, lending a moderate kick and a nice pop of color. Pickled jalapenos offer slightly more heat, plus a briny acidity that cuts through all that richness.
It's not so bad. It's more tingly than hot. Yeah.
Since you're already putting some spice in your mac and cheese, you can pump things up even further by seasoning the base with cayenne pepper and opting for a chili-studded cheese like pepper jack. Set the Tabasco on the table for chili heads who want even more spice. Given the creamy richness of mac and cheese, it can absolutely take the heat. Kimchi is a fermented cabbage from Korea that's recently become particularly popular in foodie circles. It goes well with fattier dishes like stewed pork or even fried chicken. It's also a welcome addition to mac and cheese. Both the fermented cabbage and the fermented milk play nice together, and a touch of gochujang, a Korean chili paste, brings a bit more heat and a welcome note of sweetness. Kimchi is known for its wealth of health benefits, namely nutrients and gut-healthy probiotics. Adding it to mac and cheese makes for a perfect pairing.
What could possibly improve something as delicious as macaroni and cheese? Believe it or not, a simple ingredient you might find in your fall latte. Mac and cheese is a versatile dish. You can open a box and make the most basic recipe possible, or you can go all out and craft an artisanal experience that could be considered fine dining. However, the best often falls between two extremes. You don't want food that is too little or too much. You want your mac and cheese recipe to be just right. It might seem a tad unusual, but one way to add something special to mac and cheese without going overboard is to season it with a dash of nutmeg. Nutmeg is a spice that triggers a warming sensation in the mouth and imparts a sweet, nutty flavor. While it is popular in the fall, think pumpkin spice, it may also bring to mind a familiar feeling of home and family that many people experience over the winter holidays. This can amplify layers of flavor in classic comfort food, making your finished dish next-level satisfying.
The best mac and cheese I've ever had.
The warming sensation nutmeg produces when eaten makes it a fantastic seasoning choice for tons of dishes. In eating terms, warming refers to that spicy, prickling sensation you get from certain foods. The same slight burn-your-mouth processes after you eat wasabi and chili can be delivered by savory flavors, which include soy sauce and mushrooms. Additionally, you can experience it when eating sweeter spices, such as cinnamon, cloves, anise, and of course, nutmeg. This little tongue tingle adds the perfect amount of zing to a mild, creamy, or cheesy food, making nutmeg ideal for sprucing up your cream sauces and cheese dips. It is a noteworthy addition to Alfredo sauce, bechamel, and soufflés. Freshly grated nutmeg has a more robust flavor profile, So if you want to put this spice front and center, add a dash to the top of your mac and cheese after cooking. For a more subtle hint of nutmeg, put it in the bechamel sauce you use to create the base of your cheese sauce. While nutmeg adds a flavor boost to your mac and cheese, it may also upgrade your diet with some unexpected benefits. Specifically, it has elements that may help prevent disease and enhance your overall wellness. According to WebMD, nutmeg may benefit people by offering mood-enhancing properties while helping to improve the quality and duration of sleep. Additionally, it is a source of abundant nutrients, including vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, manganese, magnesium, copper, phosphorus, zinc, and iron. Meanwhile, Verywell Health claims nutmeg can regulate blood pressure, ease pain, and supply the body with antioxidants. Although nutmeg sounds like it would be hazardous for someone with a nut allergy, it isn't a nut. Nutmeg is a seed from the myristica plant, which is native to the Maluku Islands of eastern Indonesia. This evergreen tree produces a fragrant apricot-like fruit with an oily kernel that is sun-dried for up to 8 weeks before being sold to the public. The seed features an ovular shape with a wrinkled, dark brown surface and can be found in its whole form or ground into a fine powder. People often describe nutmeg as having a warm and nutty flavor. Since it is a seed, nutmeg is typically a safe alternative for people with nut allergies. However, per Healthline, people who are allergic to other seeds, such as poppy seeds, chia seeds, or sesame seeds, should likely avoid nutmeg. Talk to your doctor if you have any questions or concerns. The most important thing to remember about adding nutmeg to any recipe is that a little goes a long way. Using too much isn't just overwhelming to your palate. Per Healthline and the Illinois Poison Center, this spice can be toxic in only a few teaspoons. Some symptoms of consuming excess nutmeg include confusion, upset stomach, and fainting. Fortunately, 1/8 of a teaspoon is safe, and it's usually enough for mac and cheese. Plus, when using nutmeg in batch recipes, the portions will be divided, lessening the risk even further.